We just wrapped up lesson 11 and it was a part 2 of yesterday's lesson. So yesterday and today we were connecting equations to graphs. This whole unit is linear functions. So functions that make straight lines. What are the two forms of linear equations? Table 1, can you tell me one of the forms? Slope-intercept form. And then standard form would be the other one. Sorry. Okay, so slope-intercept is one of the forms. Table 2, what's the equation for slope-intercept form? Okay, good. That's probably the one that you're most familiar with. And then standard form, what's the equation for that? Table 3. Maybe look at like the learning target. Okay, good. So these are our two major forms, and then they still produce like the same graph though, especially in that last activity we did. If you rearranged it, you could have rearranged all of them. You have the two forms that still make the same graph. What are the pros of using like slope-intercept form? When would you rather have slope-intercept form over standard form? When you have to graph. Because what can you easily see on the slope-intercept form graph? A different table now. So table 2 or 3, what is easy to see when it's in slope-intercept form? And it relates to the graph. In the name, slope-intercept, what's easier to see when it's in slope-intercept form? Slope is one of the things you could easily see. What letter is slope in this? M. So whatever is in front of the X, because it could be in a different order, it could be like B plus MX. But whatever is in front of the X will match the slope that's on your graph. And then what other thing can you easily see? Anyone can answer now? Slope-intercept form, you can easily see the slope and what else? The y-intercept. And what letters for the y-intercept in this? B. All right, so slope and y-intercept, that's why we call it slope-intercept form, because you really see those. If you have to graph, which you will have to graph on your test. I'm not sure when or if it's going to make you graph by hand. But when you graph, what do you have to graph first? Like, can I just start like with the slope and graph from that? What do I have to start with? So when you're having to graph something that's in slope-intercept form, you need to plot your y-intercept first. And then from that y-intercept, use your slope to plot your next point. So use M to plot next point. And then you make your graph that way. Yesterday we focused more on standard form. Do you guys remember how to graph in standard form? Right, because that one's not as easy, I think, as slope-intercept form. So you have two options for that one. You could rearrange it into slope-intercept form, so get that y alone. Or you could graph your x and y intercepts and then just draw a line to connect them. So x-intercept is when y equals 0. Right, because if you look at your graph, Your x-intercept, all the y's are on the x-axis, all the y's are 0 there. So if I had any equation, I would just plug in 0 for the y, solve for x, that's my x-intercept, put it on the x-axis. The y-intercept is when what is 0? It's when x is 0, right? Because on the y-axis, all the x's are 0. So if you just can plot those two and connect the lines, and that's another way. But again, there's pros and cons of that. Sometimes the x and y intercept are like decimals, and then it's not as easy. So that's why you need to know both. So there you go, find slope and y-intercept. Be able to rearrange it into slope-intercept form. And then there's lots of strategies. You could use Desmos, you could rearrange it. There's even one, but I never as a student really cared for it. But if you were rearranging ax plus by equals c, so let's actually do that, because that'll be helpful for your test. I know you guys don't usually take notes during this part, but like, I think it's helpful. Anyway, when we rearrange ax plus by equals c into slope-intercept form, what are we trying to isolate? What's alone in slope-intercept form? Well, this is standard form.
The y.
The y is alone in slope-intercept form. So get the y alone here. Start with what's farther. How do I cancel that ax? You would subtract it from both sides. So if it helps to think of them as numbers, go ahead. But we're trying to get the y alone. Start with this one. Get rid of it. You get rid of it by subtracting it. Whatever you do on one side, do to the other. So then I get by equals negative ax. I'll still put that first. And then plus c, because the c is positive. But the y is still not alone. So what's opposite of multiplying by b? Okay, and whatever you do on one side. And remember, you're really doing it to each term on the other side. So think like the warm-up we did today. So some people will just memorize, okay, standard form, my slope is always negative a over b. And then my y-intercept is always c over b. So I personally don't like memorizing random things, but if that helps you to memorize it, go ahead. That slope is negative a over b. And then your y-intercept is c over b when it's from standard form. Again, if you just already know how to rearrange it, then you don't have to memorize that. Questions on that or anything from the lesson? Okay. So then that brings us to like your task for the day. Get 80% or higher on the lesson 11 practice. Pretty soon I'll stop including these on the slides. But if you are still deficient in any of these, maybe consider doing those. If I see that a lot of us are done, then we can move on to Kahoot. So just, you know, to fill the time with things that would be helpful to support you in and math lab. Any questions? Feel free to ask as you go. And we'll go ahead.
I saw that there's not a lot of submissions in yet. But we only have 20 minutes left. So from what I could pull up for the statistics, it looks like people are struggling with a school sells adult tickets. Do you want to go over that one? Or do you want to go over a different one? Okay. Because the rest of them have pretty good accuracy. This one's only like 33% accurate. Let me look at it this way, actually. Okay. Okay, so a school sells adult tickets and student tickets for a play it collects 1,400 in total. The graph shows the possible combinations of the number of adult tickets sold and the number of student tickets sold. So it looks like we're deciding which is true. And it says, it tells us that if no adult tickets were sold, then 200 tickets were sold. So look at your axes. What is on the x-axis? Adults or students? Adults. So remember, coordinates usually go in the order, well, not usually, they always go in the order x, y. So if adults is on the x, then that's going to come first, and students are on the y. So if no adult tickets were sold, if there's none sold, and that means adult tickets sold was 0, then 200 tickets were sold. So if this coordinate is on the graph, then we might be able to pick that one. Is it on the graph? 0, 200? Okay, so assuming that the other ones don't make sense, then that looks like we already found our answer. But let's see what the other ones say, because it could be shuffled on yours. So that's my first answer. It looks legit so far. So then the second one says, if no student tickets were sold, so 0 for students, then 200 adult tickets were sold. Is that on our graph? 200, 0. All right, no, our x-axis doesn't even go to 200, so don't pick that one. It tells us the decrease in the sale of adult tickets for each student ticket sold. Okay, so that's talking about the slope. As the adult tickets are increasing, the student tickets are decreasing. So it's not that if we decrease the sale in adult tickets that the student tickets are going up. So that doesn't make sense. And then it says, it tells us the decrease in the sale of student tickets for each adult ticket sold. I feel like we're missing part of the question, but let me see if we're missing part of the question. I'll check my answer book right now, but because I don't really know what it's asking. But the one that makes sense was the first one that we looked at, so I would go with that one. Let me see if that's right. All right, and it is. So let me see. I feel like what it's asking you is a little unclear, but that's what the graph tells us for sure, is the first one. So questions on this one? Questions on other ones? Brady? All right, so Han wanted to find the intercepts of the graph of the equation. He decided to put the equation in slope-intercept form first. Here's his work. He concluded the x-intercept is 12, 0, the y-intercept 0, 5, and complete the following to describe the error that he made. So he definitely made an error. We have to find it. So if you want to rearrange something into slope-intercept form, what is slope-intercept form? Like the form. So we want to isolate what then? The y. The y. So if I have this as my equation, and I know there's probably other ways you could answer this, but let me show you the way that if you didn't have a graphing calculator, you could put in the answer. So I want to get y alone. Do I get rid of the 10x first or the 4? No, always get rid of what's farther from what you're trying to isolate. So that would be the 10x. How would I cancel that out? Okay, good. We're going to go one side of the equal sign, the other side. So you get 4y equals 20 minus 10x. You could also rearrange the order. You could use negative 10x plus 20. That matches what we have so far. So let's keep seeing. How do I cancel out that 4? Divide by 4, whatever you go, one side of the equal sign. And don't forget, you have to do it to each term.
Kind of like how our warm up, we have to do it each term. So what's 20 divided by 4? 5. And then -10/4 is allowed to be a fraction. But let's make it simplified. What does -10/4 simplify to? What goes into both 10 and 4? So what's 10 divided by 2? And then 4 divided by 2. So that's the equivalent fraction. Is that what he had over here? 5 minus 10x is what he has. Is that what we have? So his mistake, it looks like, is that he didn't divide that 4 from each term like he was supposed to. He only did it from the 20. So in that case, and then I would graph this and see where my intercepts are, but that's the mistake he made. So let's see what we can fill out. When Han divided both sides of the equation by 4, he neglected to divide what by 4? The -10x. So that answers that. Then what are the x and y intercepts? So you could graph that. I'll show you by hand just because you will have problems on your test where you have to graph by hand. I know you can use the calculator. Okay? I'm not forgetting anything. But if you were graphing by hand, you put your y-intercept first. What is my y-intercept? Or, yeah, you should be able to look at it and see what's y-intercept. So which one's the y-intercept? Five, right? Even though the order is reversed, in this one it's going b plus mx. B is always still your y-intercept. It's always going to be your single number, which in this one is 5. And then m is always your slope. It's always what's in front of your x. So in that case, if I'm graphing this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you would use your slope to find your next point. So slope is rise over run. Because it's a negative slope, I have to go down 5. And then for the run, you always go to the right. So I'm going to go to the right too. So from my y-intercept, we're going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To the right 2, and I'm on the x-axis. So I can actually stop there. But if you were graphing, you put like a line through it, you then have to straight line to connect them. All right, so then what's my x-intercept? Where is that on the x-axis? Table 3, can you tell me where that is on the x-axis? I'll come back to table 3. Table 2, can you tell me where this is on the y-axis? 5. So when we already said that earlier, y-intercept is 5. So it's x and then y, so that makes sense. So then where is this on the x-axis? Oh, that's here. Yeah. Oh, 2. 2. And then it should be written in the order x, which is 2, and then at your x-intercept, y is always 0, so that makes sense. So that's filling out that. Let's see if there's more. Then you know it. Let's make sure the right answers are marked. And they are. You pick them. There's no errors in the question, so that's that one. Questions on this one? And again, you could also do it with Desmos, just type it in, do not, if you type it in, you don't have to rearrange it. You can just look at the X and the Y and get those answers, but you would need to know the rearranging steps for the first part, for where you made a mistake. So that's why I shouldn't go. Question, Dave? Yeah, we will just put it. Yeah. It's you could order the line. I just want to make sure I'm okay. So. Since all it's asking for is the y-intercept, say I was taking a test, what would be a good thing to use? Desmos, if I was taking a time test and all it cares about is the y-intercept, I would just use Desmos for each one. And the first one, I don't really need to, because I can tell just by looking at it with my y-intercept. 2, and it should be written where the y is 2, not the x, so it goes x, y. The other ones, it looks like I will need to use Desmos or rearrange it, but rearranging would be more time consuming if it was a test. So for the others, I'll just use Desmos. And you do not have to rearrange it in Desmos. If they do use other letters other than X and Y, then you would have to change it to X and Y. Okay, so the red line would be for B. And we're asking about the y-intercept, so only look at the y-axis. I'll even erase the blue line so you can see it better. All right, so where does it touch the y? 6. It's as easy as that. So it even lets you click on your x and y intercepts, but it only asks about the y. That's why I'm only looking at the y. And then the other one for C, see where it touches your y-axis, zoom in if you need to, but they usually will let you click on it, like if you hover over it. So here's my y-intercept. This other one would be the x-intercept, even though it looks close to the y, it touches the x-axis. So y-intercept for C would then be 2. Questions on this one? And it is marked the way it should be. All right, we might have time for one more. Or the rest is easy. Or anything else, any other practices, any other general questions? All right, so then we'll end it there. I mean, you can still work for like 4 more minutes. The goal is to get 80% or higher. So if you meet that goal, you get the full points for today's task.